And we are back here once again with another episode of the MSK show, and this is going to be episode 44. And in this episode of the MSK show, I will be having a conversation with the indie creator Darrell J. Pursiful, actually.
Well, actually, it's Darrell, but that's cool.
Yeah, Mr. Darrell J. Pursiful. Make sure I corrected it right then and there. So if you guys are listening to this on the podcasting platforms where this episode will eventually be, you guys will be like, man, he did it right there. He's a professional. So I do want to say thank you to Darrell for being here, because I had someone else scheduled, but as you guys know, this week I had to work an extra day. So I did know that I would be able to get here back home on time. And Darrell was like, hey, I'll come on. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, awesome. And as you guys know, I do love talking to, indie authors of all sorts of, shapes and sizes. You're a comic book writer, you're an author, doesn't matter. I'll be the guy to hear your story. Well, I remember it. That's the key, because I hear a lot of them. There's a lot of stories. I'm not saying very few of them stick, but if you just like get my wheels going, I'll probably remember what the person told me their story was. So let's start here, since this is your, first time on the show. How was your life growing up?
Very interesting. My parents were high school teachers, both of them, and my dad was the basketball coach at an inner city high school in Detroit. And so I kind of grew up, but they were both transplanted Southerners from Appalachia, from Kentucky. And so my family roots are all in Kentucky. Particularly in the southeastern part. And there are some counties down there where there are more Baptists than there are people. And so that was kind of their upbringing. And then grew up, as I said, in the suburbs of Detroit. Mm-hmm. And that whole world is a little bit different from Bell County, Kentucky. And
so you survived Detroit.
Well, I survived the suburbs. Let's not make it out to be more than it was.
Okay, so you weren't in like the bad parts of Detroit that people mention.
I was not in the bad parts. Now, I kind of had to go through some of the bad parts to get to where my parents taught. My parents were up there in '69 during the riots, and my mom taught typing, and some of the football players took it upon themselves to be her bodyguard when things were getting very dicey up there, and making sure she got safely out to the parking lot and to her car and so forth. So they could tell you some stories, but I led a fairly sheltered life, I'd have to say.
Really? Okay. So you were homeschooled instead of going to public school?
Oh no! I went to the public schools in our suburban neighborhood.
Do you look back on that? Like in your mind, sometimes you're like, did you actually enjoy going to school?
Yeah, I'm one of those nerds that loved learning. I mean, didn't love being the nerd and being bullied and all of that, but that kind of comes with the territory. But really, I loved learning, and that's why most people can get a perfectly good education in 12 years, and some of us it takes a little bit longer because we just kind of keep. No, give me more. And that was kind of me.
So when you say nerd, is it like maybe you were into, like, let's say D&D?
Oh, absolutely. I was a dungeon master for my middle school friends. And
okay, so I asked everyone this, and say, since most people come on actually weirdly all like D&D, man, you guys are just straight up nerds. Did you like that Dungeons and Dragons movie that recently came out with Chris Pine?
I actually have not seen it.
Okay.
I actually have not seen it, and it's not because I have anything against Wizards of the Coast or anything like that. I know there's a lot of controversy there. It's just I have a family and a mortgage, and
family and a mortgage. God forbid. You live in the American dream. You got a house and a white picket fence and a dog and a wife.
Well, we don't have a white picket fence. We do have a very highly opinionated cat.
Cats are you get cats that either really show you too much affection, no affection, or you get the ones that just want to sleep in your house and eat all your food.
I think Elias is in the category of when he wants for you to show affection, he darn well wants it. But otherwise, you can leave him alone and he'll be just fine.
He's not a cat that will keep you up at night randomly,
Oh,
right?
No. He's a very good cat.
What I notice about cats, when they sleep, they just go for hours. They'll just
Oh yeah,
find any place to lay down and just knock
yes,
out. You could probably just
yes.
sleep on your that case you have up there and just sleep up there for hours if you wanted to.
My wife has a little crafting desk
Hmm.
that's right by the window in our bedroom, and that is one of Elias's favorite places.
Hmm.
Whenever he is upstairs, he's usually downstairs with one of my daughters, and when he goes upstairs, that's kind of his place. So you better hope that Mama doesn't have any crafting stuff up there because it will be on the floor because he has to lay on that desk and look out the window and guard the house from all
Yeah.
the squirrels and things. And then he'll take a nap there any time of the day or night.
So, how long have you been married for?
We're coming up on 30 years.
30 years. You've been married
Next
since like what,
month,
1994 or some shit like that?
1994. Yes.
So you got married the year I was born. That's
Wow.
crazy. That's insane.
Wow.
So how do you stay married this long? 30 years, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. What's the advice
Absolutely.
you would give to people to stay married as long as you guys have?
Well, anything that I would say would sound like a cliche because it's all about listening. It's all about being attentive to your partner's needs. It's all about you don't have to be the one who has the final word because that other person is just as smart as you and is just as capable as you, and maybe they're the one that has the better sense of what to do. And so it truly is about learning to be the biblical image is the two become one flesh.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with taking the time to be honest and to listen and to learn and to make mistakes and to forgive. Um, I learned somewhere that on the island of Crete, they have an expression for what happens when a married couple is having a fight, and it's one of those big knockdown dragouts that you can hear on the other side of the village.
Yeah.
They call that in Greek making love. That's
Oh
what they're
gosh.
doing. That because think about it. That's if you can be that honest with the person, if you can be that vulnerable with your own feelings, you're going to start loving that person more than perhaps you did before. And so
And obviously, since you've been married this long, you have kids, obviously.
I have one daughter and then a spare daughter who is a dear friend of our daughter who is currently
Nice.
living with us.
Okay. So you only just have the one kid, which is
We have the one kid.
yeah. So the experiences of raising a daughter back then versus now were probably so much different because
I expect so. I expect so. Of course, see, I was an only, and so I never grew up with sisters or anything like that, and so I mean, even having a wife in the same house was a learning experience in many ways, and then add a daughter on top
and
of
a cat.
that.
So,
So
got
yeah,
a whole lot of kitty cats in there.
and the cat. Yeah, only one cat. I can think we can handle one cat.
Gosh. So I'll ask you, since what do you do as for a profession after you got out of public school?
Well, actually, a number of things. Some of them might be surprising. Right now, I'm an editor.
Okay.
I edit curriculum here in Georgia. I actually spent about 7 years as a pastor, and that was kind of where my graduate school training was, and I did that. I tell people I was a pastor, and then I finally had to give it up for health reasons because I was sick of them and they were sick of me.
Why did you give it up because you felt like your words weren't getting through to them?
Well, I mean, it legitimately was at least partly a health issue. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, and I was in a very bad place then with depression and so forth. And it was time for me to put that aside.
Mm-hmm.
So now I am editing Bible study curriculum. I'm still involved in that world in that sense, and I'm also an adjunct professor here at Mercer University in Macon, and I teach in the religion department, and so I have my toes in that world still today, just not on a day-to-day. Have to go to the board meetings, have to approve the color of the carpet, that aspect of it.
So you've been a Christian your whole life, essentially.
Pretty much. Grew up in the church.
Yeah.
My dad was a deacon in our Baptist church, and the joke was that he beat the pastor there most Sundays. So, yeah.
So I'll ask you, since Christianity is looked at in a myriad of different ways throughout a lot of people's eyes, what do you feel like is the worst thing a Christian can do as far as like trying to live out a day-to-day Christian life?
Oh, how controversial do you want to be on this show, Joseph?
I don't care.
The worst thing to me that a Christian can do is to forget that they're supposed to be like Jesus, because there are other publicly acclaimed figures who might claim the mantle of Christianity, but you look at their life, you look at their rap sheet, you realize maybe they're seeing something in the Gospels that I have not noticed.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things about being religious is I think the people that show the best examples do it by actions, not words. Yes. And I know a lot of people don't understand that. And it's mostly younger people, because younger people go, well, just trust someone. Just trust. They might have, you know what? I wish I could be young and be optimistic like that. And that's a really decent way to look at things. But as you grow older, you learn to balance your optimism with like actual reality, because I in my heart want to believe someone's going to do the right thing and they'll do the right decisions and all that stuff. I do really hope that happens. But most of the time, that's not even how life plays out. Life could give you several different challenges a day, honestly. So someone's actions are tested usually by how consistent they are. Like, I wouldn't say someone is morally apt in religion if they're like at a strip club Saturday and Sunday and then going to the church like on Wednesday.
That is a kind of a red flag. Yeah,
that is a pretty big red flag, actually.
Yeah.
So just something like that, I would say.
One of the things that really, what do I want to say? It challenges me and it hurts me that so many people, especially people my daughter's age, she's in her 20s.
Oh, that generation is something now.
that have just literally been wounded by people bearing the name of Jesus or Christianity. That they have they'd be thrown to the side. That no, your concerns don't matter. We don't want you to ask questions. You just need to shut up and believe what we tell you. And sometimes that even leads to some terrible abuse. That it just breaks my heart to see what some of the kids, and I have to call them kids even if they're in their 20s, my daughter's age have experienced with respect to the church.
And I think with religion, along with being like an authority figure, let's say a cop, if you have just even one or two bad apples for people, just kind of sours the entire experience. There are things in life, in certain occupations, whatever you do, if there's like just any amount of bad apples, I would say like if the instances you would go through it, maybe like less than 5 people, then average people, since they're not like, as you know, since you're a professor, media literacy is not the biggest thing for people. Right. So they apply the anecdotal evidence of making sure that in their head, the confirmation biases, every Christian or every cop is like that. When it's like, no, like people don't understand how small their life is in compared to like everyone around them, like the Christians that I would encounter in your state going to be different from the Christians I encounter in mine, and they're not even applicable. Some might actually live out being a Christian better. Some might just live out of being worse. But the ones that live out of worse are the ones that get the most attention and the ones that stick in people's minds, because
that's a very important observation. Is that you don't judge by who gets the most clicks on social media. That is not necessarily the accurate representation.
Because I think another thing that people need to understand is that, like, if you're living a life experience, it is anecdotal to itself because you're just one person. There's just in the United States, how many people live here? Like millions, let's say millions and millions of people.
330 million thereabouts.
That's crazy. Yeah. Like, you have all this experience happening, and you have all this, like, we're essentially a melting pot of people. And then a lot of people, want to be religious because they feel like there's some moral values to it. And it does. If you do it, well, I think Christianity is a big one proponent because there's a lot of, like, moral compasses to follow. Generally, 10 Commandments obviously is one of them. And I generally don't think any parent that takes their kid to church is bad. Trying to instill into them some sort of sense of moral values, because I know everyone's had things. Even you had this when you were younger. Like, your parents will tell you something, but you're kind of biased towards your parents. You don't, like, listen to them. You think that they're crazy. So you hear from somebody else, and it clicks in you. I think that's good, honestly.
Well, and I'm sure you understand this as well. So you grow up and you reach a point where it doesn't matter who has told it to you. You've got to figure it out for yourself.
Oh yeah, true.
And that may be very challenging both for you and for your parents and the authority figures in your life. But at the end of the process, you come out with something that is truly yours, and that'll stick with you a lot more than, the guy that we pay to listen to every week is telling me this. That's completely different.
So what did you think about the situation of the Last Supper thing that happened at the Olympics earlier this year?
As I understand it, that was a portrayal of a completely different painting that had nothing to do with the Last Supper. If I understand correctly, and my memory is not what it was, I think this was like a feast of Dionysus or something like that.
Yes.
And maybe the takeaway is, wow, a lot of Renaissance painters drew from imagery that already existed in terms of Dionysus while they were painting pictures of this other banquet that is important to them for religious and cultural reasons. And so who was it? I think it was Dallas Willard said in his opinion, a mature Christian is one who is very hard to offend. And I try to hold on to that, because my goodness, life's too short.
So I'll ask you, what were your favorite things about being a pastor? Like the activities, getting to meet people?
I love teaching, which is why I'm still doing education in terms of writing and in terms of professoring. Preparing lessons, preparing sermons, that was probably my favorite part. But just generally, you meet so many interesting people. And you get to learn their stories, and they will be vulnerable to you because you are the pastor. They will perhaps tell you things that they wouldn't want necessarily other people to know, but they figure they can trust you. And
you were like that guy in the movies where they go to the Catholic Church and they just confess everything to.
Well, there's a little bit of that in there. There's a little bit of that, and it's a very humbling thing for someone to tell you their story. And to be truly honest about what their story was, and it's also very freeing on the other side of that. When we moved to Macon, I was able to have a nice heart-to-heart with my new pastor about, like I said, my health issues and how that had kind of thrown a monkey wrench in what I thought life was going to be. And it's very liberating. It's very liberating to be able to tell your story. And that may be why I gravitated toward writing, because all stories can touch onto our stories.
So I'll ask you this. I'll do the first ones first usually. So you yourself are an author. You have written books before. Okay. Yes. So as I do with all the indie creators here, I'll start with this. Where did you get the inspiration from? Did you watch a movie? Did you read a favorite author's book, and you just went from there?
Well, let me back it up about 10 years.
Okay. So in the 1960s.
Yeah, back in the Bronze Age. When my daughter was 12 years old, she read at a 12th grade reading level. And as you can imagine, it was very difficult to find things that were challenging enough for her to read, but that were not dealing with, you might say, adult type content that a 12-year-old was not really ready to dive into. And so I kind of started writing little short stories and things simply to amuse her. And that resulted in a 5-book series for middle grade readers that you can find. The series is called Into the Wonder. And it's the traditional Harry Potter, Percy Jackson type story. A person discovers that they have a magical or supernatural heritage, and all of the problems and dangers and wonderment that come from that. And so I did that, and I finished that, and I felt very good about it. And then I started wondering, what would I write for me? And I think what I decided was, well, what if I turned that whole premise that has been done to death in the middle grade readers, of the person discovering that they have a supernatural heritage, and then they go off and fight monsters and what have you. What if I started with somebody who was perfectly aware of a supernatural heritage, but for whatever reason got stuck in our world? And so that was kind of the seed of the idea. What if you took Dumbledore or Aragorn or somebody like that and plop him down on Main Street, USA, and say, here, deal. Here's a bus schedule. Figure it out. You know, here's how you gonna pay your rent, where you gonna live. And so that kind of developed into Shadow of the King, which is the first book in my new trilogy. That
so how many books have you written and published so far?
This Shadow of the King is technically my 6th. I have the 5-book series for middle grade readers, and now this is the first of a series for adult readers.
Okay, so what was, I imagine when you first got the proof for your first book, you were like super excited. I imagine seeing it fully done.
Oh yes.
So the process of your writing, do you feel like you've improved with each book, or do you feel like you were
really think good? I have. I would like to lie to myself and think that I have, but I think I have. I think I have. Somebody, who was it? A book I read suggested that once you've written 1 million words of crap, you're ready. And I think I'm maybe close to that. So we'll see.
Oh gosh, that's crazy. I don't think I even type 1 million words. That's not impossible. I type in like Twitter sentences. I just call people stupid if they don't agree with my opinion, but that's just usual Twitter shenanigans. So so as someone that's written now at this point 6 books, what is advice you would offer to someone to get better at writing and improving when they know that there's a point they need to improve?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with where exactly that point is. You know, are there mechanical things? Because I have been critique partners and beta readers for a few writers, and sometimes it's just as simple as, dude, you need to learn more about how to punctuate a sentence. You know, or you tend to overuse these particular words. When you find some new words in there, it could be something very, very simple like that. And sometimes, you know, the whole thing is just, where are we going here? I'm lost and I can't find the plot because you're going in so many different directions. So I think it's hard to say one piece of advice. It's more of a, to me, it's more holistic. It's I never know what I'm going to learn next until I find the next problem that I have to try to figure out how to solve. And fortunately, I came into this with some pretty good English grammar and punctuation skills. Works as an editor. Okay, right.
Yeah.
So for me, it was much more about learning how to give characters a distinctive voice, learning how to move the plot along, learning how to make sure that my scenes carry enough weight, that they're not just fluff, they're doing something. Um, and so it is far much more an art than a science, at least in my experience. I know that there are skills to learn. But to me, it's far more about, you got to find where those weak spots are so you can give them work.
So have you been to any like in-person book signings at all, actually?
Actually, I have not. I tell people I wrote in my middle grade series for an audience of one. I wrote it for my little girl. And I got some of her friends hooked on it, so I was happy, kind of pleased about that.
Yeah, 3 people is better than 0. It's always a good start.
Absolutely. So my attitude all the way through this was this is not my retirement plan. This is my hobby that more or less pays for itself, and I'm happy with that.
So do you sell your books on Amazon or audiobooks like a lot of other people do?
Amazon. I do not have an audiobook, but you can get it on Amazon. You can get it Nook version, and of course a Kindle version. So you get a paperback or a Kindle from Amazon. You get a Nook, and you get it directly from Ingram Spark if you want.
So what would be some of the things you like and dislike about selling on Amazon?
I'll have to say I think they have done about as good a job as you can of making the process understandable and accessible. The back end of it isn't nearly as engaging to me. I read the reports and I look at the things, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to scratch a personal itch, and if I can make other people happy in the process, then that's just even better. I've got a couple of nice reviews, so I'm happy about that, and just ready to go and see what happens next.
So the next thing I'll ask is the thought process and creation behind the books. So I ask every indie author and creator this anyway. So the first thing would be, how do you craft a main protagonist for your story?
Well, a lot of it kind of builds out of the premise of what kind of story I feel like I need to tell. So with Rune, who is my protagonist for Shadow of the King, I wanted someone fairly competent, because the trope that I was fighting against is, we're going to throw you in the deep water and you don't know anything about this weird magical world. No, he's got a handle on the magical world. It's our world that gives him problems. Human interaction and technology and all of those things can throw him for a loop, but he's got a handle on the magical world. And as I develop the story, I love old folklore where the elves were not necessarily bright and beautiful, that sometimes they were dark and scary. And so I decided that Rune needed to have some darkness and some scariness about him, that he brought with him into this world. And so from there, it just kind of developed that this is really the story of an outsider trying to come to terms with feeling at home, not only in this world, but feeling at home in his own skin. He knows that he has done some things in the past that have been not optimal from a moral standpoint. But how do you overcome that? How do you find your way in this world that seems so alien to everything that you have ever known? And so it kind of became, in some ways, I did not set out to make a metaphor for things like neurodivergence or things of that nature, but it kind of turned into one in some ways. Rune sees the world very, very differently than you or I do, and that sometimes is a good thing, and sometimes it leaves him standing there saying, "Wait a minute, what did I do? I did something wrong. What did I do wrong?"
So how, and as you know, for an author, every good hero needs a good villain. So
Oh.
what's the thought process on creating a villain to challenge your protagonist throughout the story? Or do you have multiple villains do it? Because I know there's always like, you have like minor, like in like in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like a foot soldier is like a minor throwaway villain, but there's always like Shredder is the big villain. So how's your thought process on that?
Well, I mean, in this 3-book trilogy, there are some overarching villains that don't, well, with one exception, I don't think, and even after 3 books, any of them are going to actually appear on stage, but they're kind of there and foreboding and dark, and one of them is Rune's former boss, who is now very upset with him. Because you know how when you leave work, sometimes you steal stuff from the office when you go. Well, yeah, that's what Rune did. He stole some stuff from the office before he left, and his boss wants it back. And that kind of becomes one of the central tensions. But he is not the villain that Rune has to deal with on a daily basis. That in the first book, in Shadow of the King, takes the role of the agent that the boss has sent to recover this stolen object and to take care of Rune. And so she is in many ways Rune's mirror. She had a very similar upbringing to him, except she loved it. She no moral qualms. She was serving her king, and that's where she found her identity. And so it makes a good foil for him. She is jealous of everything that he had, and he despises everything about her because he sees that she might be him. She might, if things had turned out differently, he was going exactly the same path that she is going, and he maybe does not like that very well. I think it's important for an antagonist to, at least in some way, tweak the hero, thumb their nose at the hero by reminding the hero of how they could be if they had made different choices.
So one of my friends, we went out just a day ago just to get some stuff. Look, we were talking about just creating characters just in our head. We were talking about, your friends just talk about a lot of stuff. And we honed in on this because like I do this all the time with people, and some people's stuff hit because they create the most simplest of things. And then usually if the author or comic book guy makes the simplest idea premise and it takes off over the person that makes like a more like in-depth, super like layered character than theirs and take off. This is the way that I would always phrase it to people. It's not really about it taking off. I would just say you don't always have to do the most layered thing, or you don't always have to do something simple. It really just depends on what do you want to be known for. If anything you do manage to take off, honestly. Yeah. Because people will go like the Twilight. I'm pretty sure the Twilight books written by that one lady probably stink, honestly. But it was a simple enough premise that it got millions of people to read the books.
Well, that's the debate, and I think I love Jim Butcher. He's one of my writer heroes, and I want to say that I heard something very similar from George R.R. Martin. They both say something to the effect of, and I'm not going to say it nearly as eloquently, that you can take a lousy idea, and if you are expert in how you present it and tell the story, it can still be something wonderful. And that's a whole lot easier than taking a unique, creative, powerful idea if you don't have the skills to pull it off.
Yeah. And
And
that's the
so,
thing too, is like I think enough people don't understand this, like from like the creative point of view, because they're so creative that they're not thinking about what the average person can
right, right,
basically, I would say, read and understand. Because
yeah.
still to this day, people
You don't
there
need
are,
a high concept
yeah,
with
yeah.
lots of corollaries
Yeah,
to
because you know
sell.
this. You know, there's a lot of famous books, movies, TV
Yeah,
series out there where people are debating on stuff that has been factually proven either wrong or false or right. But
yeah,
they themselves are so media literate because they're just an average person.
yeah,
A lot of it just went over their head. So I didn't say to creative people is think of this in your head. If you want something to take off,
yeah,
you might want to try to balance out what can the average person understand, and then
yeah,
that other person that's going
yeah,
to take it a lot further
yeah,
and dive into your characters,
yeah,
what can they take from it,
yeah.
you know?
Rune is an immigrant who's a fish out of water. Boom.
See? Easy. That works. Simple. Now, if she's like some secret undercover FBI agent and she was like secretly
Yeah,
born
yeah.
in Islam, probably that would go into a different way. But just
Well,
all
and
the premise
that's
is simple.
also lower level. That's
Mhm,
once you have established what your premise is,
mhm.
uh, then you can expand upon it as long as that doesn't get in the way. I like I think I were we on the air when we talked about Dungeons and Dragons, because I have fallen in love with the actually the Fate role playing game system, and they have what they call their high concept. Every character has a high concept, which is a one sentence statement. Who is this person? And I have brought that into my character creation for writing. Is can I boil this character down to a one sentence statement that tells me who they are? Rune is a defector from fairyland. That's who he is.
So the next part of your creation of your books I'll ask you is supporting characters, because obviously
Yes.
your character's not going to be alone. There's going to have a supporting cast.
Let's
So
hope. Yes.
what is your process of creating a supporting cast for your main hero?
A lot of it is similar to my antagonist, is in that I want people who represent parts of my protagonist that maybe are underdeveloped, or parts of my protagonist that shore him up. One of my favorite side characters is Thora, who is the wife of the main sidekick in book one, whose name is Brack. Brack is a dwarf, and he is very good with gadgets and making things. And he's very gruff because I lean into all the tropes. Okay. And Thora is just this mom. She keeps her husband in line because he needs to be kept in line. She raises the children. They've got two children still living at home, and she cooks food, and of course she knows healing magic, because what mom doesn't know healing magic? And a lot of times it comes out of chicken and dumplings, you know. So so I put her in the story because I figured Rune needed a mom. He needed someone who would show him love and respect and welcome in a way that he had not known before. One of my favorite scenes in Shadow of the King is Rune sits down and has dinner with this family of dwarves, and he is completely blown away because it's such a normal dinner. They joke around the table, they tell stories, they do the things that every family knows happens. It was completely new to him. It was completely new to him, and it kind of freaked him out.
The other thing I'll ask you
Yeah,
is, as you said with your books early on, you don't
yeah,
like a slog. So how do
yeah.
you do that in your own books? How do you go about the pacing of the book actually?
You know, that is one thing where I think I have grown a fair bit, just in terms of I don't think I'll ever be an earnest outliner or plotter, but I have learned how to force myself to outline a little bit better than perhaps when I started. Um, and again, I'll go to Jim Butcher because I really love his writing, and I love on YouTube you can see him talking at writers' conferences about his process, and he says that he basically he knows how they begin and he knows how they end, and he puts a big explodey bit in the middle, and that is outlining 101 right there.
Oh yeah, that's everything. Say like if
know how the story starts, know the point that you want it to end at, and put something big and devastating and catastrophic right in the middle that the hero is going to have to deal with. And so I've kind of that's probably still at least 80% of my outlining process is, do I know where what do I know how it begins? Do I know how it ends? Do I know what the explodey bit in the middle is going to be? And so from there, it's almost a fractal. Okay, how do you build on the front part? What happens between point A and the explodey bit in the middle? How do you outline the repercussions of the explodey bit to get you to the end of it?
So after that pacing, we have dialogue, because there's been a lot of people talking recently about how often should you use the word said, because in a novel it's not like a comic book where it's pictures that can show you what's happening. A novel is characters just blatantly talking, and even how you portray action is a different way too. How do you go about the dialogue between your characters?
That's I think I do it okay. It is a place where I think I learn more about my characters through their dialogue than probably anything else. Even to the extent that I see what my characters are saying, and suddenly I understand them maybe a little bit better than I did before, and I maybe even have to go back to my character sheet and say I got to change that because this makes a whole lot more sense for this character. And the mechanics of it, what you were mentioning, how many times do you use those tags? Like he said, he cried, whatever. Those can be overdone for sure. You also kind of have to know when, wait a minute, this is a kind of a complicated situation. I need to make sure that the person understands who's talking here. To me, the real challenge is more in how do the characters speak? Do they have an accent? Do they have particular word choices? Do they have particular cuss words that they lean on to kind of set them apart? Do they say ain't or not? And all of those things kind of go into another way of giving a glimpse at what those characters are like. Do they use a more educated vocabulary, or do they use very simple monosyllabic words?
So the next thing I'll ask you is, what's your preferred genre of books that you like to read? You're more of a sci-fi, fantasy?
I am more of an urban fantasy more than anything else. Again, I'm going to mention Jim Butcher. He's kind of one of my favorites. I like Benedict Jacka is good. He's very much in that vein. But I have recently begun reading, almost finished Brian McClellan's first novel, Promise of Blood, which is a flintlock fantasy. Very, very interesting. Love the world building. I've started it for somewhat selfish reasons, in that the world that Rune has rebelled against is one where there is both firearms and magic. And so I kind of wanted to see what McClellan was doing with that, to see if it would spark anything in me, because I happen to know that in book 3 there's going to be a large pitched battle, so I might need to get my ducks in a row in terms of some of that. But I've truly enjoyed it. Look forward. I'll probably be finishing it before in the next few days, actually.
Yes, sir. So there are some controversial authors. I'm pretty sure you have opinions on, or not even controversial. This guy's definitely an inspiration to people. Now, I haven't read any of this guy's stuff, but I can definitely say about the way people talk about it in the story. It's inspiring. Pretty sure the guy I'm going to mention is Brandon Sanderson. He's the topic of a lot of people's discussion. What's your general opinion of him? And have you read any of his stuff?
I read parts of the Mistborn series. Very good writer. Very, very good writer. He writes many words. And I am more of a popcorn kind of guy. I like to read shorter things where I can kind of see the ending.
Oh yeah.
You know,
When the book's a
and
little too thick, you're like, oh
somebody
god.
tells me, "Oh, here's this 600-page book. Oh, and it's part 1 of 10." That's my personal preference. That is nothing but my personal preference.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So like I
but
do that sometimes too. I'll have like comic books over, as you can see. Some of
yeah,
the smaller bite-sized ones that are like 24, 28
yeah,
pages.
yeah, yeah.
When I can usually get to the end of it, I'm like, wow. Because there was one that I read for an indie comic book that I really liked. I thought it was really great. It's like this James Bond Rambo style indie comic book. It was good. It was actually pretty good. I recommend people buy it. It was 120 pages, and I was like,
Of a
damn, this
comic
is
book? My goodness.
yeah, yeah, it's long, but it obviously was the first project for this guy's
Yeah.
company with this
Mhm.
working collaborator with someone. So I
Yeah.
understood why it was 120 pages, because by the time you get to the next book, is going to be a little bit of time. So you want to make sure there's a lot of meat on that bone right
Yeah.
there. But when you think about a 120-page book, just that right there, that's if those kind of books are slogs, it
Yeah.
is
That's a
dreadful to
commitment.
get through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a commitment. And that's why I tend to like even like short story collections.
Like
Uh,
anthologies. Yeah, I like those too.
our anthologies. Wonderful. Actually, I have a short story published in an anthology a few years back.
Mhm.
And it was fun to do because, man, I get to finish after just a few thousand words. That's awesome, you know.
Mhm.
But then when the finished product come out, I truly enjoyed reading all of the other contributions, and it's just a neat way to do, especially speculative fiction, where you just kind of say, here's a neat idea. Let me throw it out there and play with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't think enough people do
without
that.
having to write 100 pages of backstory of the history of the Borch Empire, you know.
Yeah, I don't think enough people do that, honestly. I don't think enough people toy around with the idea of an anthology, because a lot of people like, I have all these ideas in my head. Well, at some point there probably is someone who's already done this, or someone that is currently probably working on doing this.
Yeah.
Just put out your stories as
Yeah.
anthologies and see which one, like you said right there, see which one that sticks to most people, then kind of go off like, okay, that story has the most interest, because you have authors that I've heard on the show where they're like, oh, I do a lot of books and some of them don't hit as much. Well, it's like, one of your ideas has interest, the other one probably doesn't have enough interest in it. There's a lot of varying readers among like novels.
Yeah.
There's some genres and people that just are more interested in this subject more. I'm not saying you can't create an audience for it, but like, you got to kind of understand there's not going to be a lot of people there for a specific
absolutely.
genre.
And there's so much of that is completely beyond anybody's ability to predict.
Or control. Yeah.
Lightning strikes, and for whatever reason, at the right time, the right place, this story, this character, this premise, it just takes off.
Yeah. I think if enough people were to like if there was just a website to do that on, I'm pretty sure there is, but most of those people, even if they, or like, I know people like the idea of webtoons. I'm pretty sure you've heard of that before. So like the problem with webtoons is that, let's say that author or creator on there got big. Well, since you've conditioned people to not pay for your work and just kind of accept it as free, if you want to make money off that audience, that's gonna be pretty hard to convince people work you've been giving them for free. Hey, can I start getting like $15 a book for that? They're gonna be like, what the fuck? That's why I think creations like that have their own problems, because if you do want to leverage those people into a business, how are you going to convince people work you've been legitimately giving them for free for maybe years on end, they not to pay? And to be fair, there's people that are never going to buy a physical book. They're just only going to read online or just read the Cliff Notes. So the market's very weird, and a lot of people just don't know how to navigate it right now. But that's the beauty of it too. You're not really supposed to know how to navigate it. It changes constantly.
Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West right now. It's kind of who knows what the rules are going to even be next year, as far as
So the other thing I'll ask you is, there's like movies to book adaptations.
Oh yeah.
How much of the book accuracy should be in the movie?
Oh, obviously, if you're moving from one medium to another, some things simply are not going to work.
It just can't translate. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
cannot translate. So much of a novel, for example, takes place in the heads of the characters.
That is true. Yeah.
that it's all about their feelings. It's all about
Mhm.
what they're thinking at the moment as they are suddenly dodging because the bullet is coming their way, and
Yes.
how in the world does that translate accurately to something like a motion picture, where the spectacle is kind of a part of it, and the visuals are much more of a part of it. So I understand in my head that there will be changes. Anytime somebody takes one of my favorite novels and turns it into a TV show or a movie or whatever, there will be changes, or even a comic book, I imagine, for that effect. But to me, that doesn't give the adapter carte blanche to just take the names of the characters and run. It has to, at least in some sense, be faithful even as an adaptation. And maybe the best example are the two attempts at a Percy Jackson live action. The movies were not very faithful. The Disney series, or at least the first season of the Disney series, was wonderfully faithful, even though it was not a perfect representation, because it couldn't be, because you're moving from one medium to a different medium. And so it's well as so many other things, there has to be a certain sensitivity and a certain respect for the source material, to say, okay, legitimately, we cannot take this beloved comic book character and turn him into a live action movie.
Yeah.
Without something's going to have to give. The story's going to have to give. Something's going to have to be simplified. Something's going to have to give. But that doesn't mean you can't do it with love and respect.
Because I think, I'm pretty sure you've watched the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Lord of the Rings movies, and like the Hobbit, I heard was like a 2-book series or whatever, or one big book, and they stretched it out for 3 movies.
It turned into a 3-movie trilogy from a children's book. So
yeah. It's one of those things where, because they want to make money so bad, just something like that, like a book like that needed to be 3 movies. And I saw the 3rd one in theaters because I saw the other 2 while I was at home. I was like, this needs to be a 3rd movie. This could have just been wrapped up in the other one.
Exactly. Well, and there have been people who have even done their own edits of it and have gotten the whole trilogy down to a lengthy feature-length movie. Just because. Well, and I think what they were doing was let's import all of the lore to turn this into a prequel to The Lord of the Rings. That was really not Tolkien's intention in writing The Hobbit, and all that lore is neat, but it does kind of bloat the story.
Because when even for like comic book movies as well, when it comes to like just adapting a novel to a screen, I think the thing people need to understand is, if the author like essentially sold their soul of that book to the studio, at that point they think like they can just do anything they want with it. So the people that
can do what they want to do, and that's many times.
At that point, you have a thing where the people that read the book want to see what's adapted on screen. But there's a big problem with that, is because there's a lot of people that haven't even read the book, and their first experience to the book is the movie they're seeing. So if they're seeing the movie in an adaptation that's not really faithful to what the book is, they think that's the book because they haven't read the book.
When the Percy Jackson theatrical movie came out, my daughter and I joked that the best thing about it was that even if you read the book, you don't know what's going to happen next. And the worst thing about it is, even if you've read the book, you don't know what's going to happen next.
Also, that's the thing with books sometimes, is you need to understand, when you transfer mediums, pacing becomes even more of a factor for a movie. Because with a movie, it's a lot more in a confined, it's a time limit, it's a confined space. You're going to get maybe max an hour and 30 minutes for an average runtime, maybe an hour sticks like an hour and 99 minutes. You're for pushing it. And some books don't even need to even be that long. Arguably, they add filler to most of these scenes to make the book adaptation movie go longer. So for me, this is what I always tell people, kind of understand that they're two different mediums, but I would always say if you want the pure essence of what you're of the thing you just got exposed to as far as movie, go read the book. But there's the thing is, people are lazy. They don't actually like sitting down and reading.
Look at the original source material, whatever that is. That's where you kind of at least need to start, if it's at all possible.
Yeah.
And it goes the other way, novelizations of movies.
Yeah.
Okay, start with the movie. Let me give me the baseline of what the original creator intended here.
Yeah, because I think when it comes to like a series that a lot of people love when I was growing up, Harry Potter. It's a very big series. I mean, the author's rich beyond anything we can comprehend. Probably could wipe her ass with $1 million one day and just not care. Recently coming up, they're going to do a Harry Potter TV series.
Yes.
And they've most of the creatives working on it have had interviews where they've explicitly stated they want to make it a more faithful adaptation of the source material, because from everything I've gathered from people that have watched the movies, they say the movies are good to decent, but they don't have a lot of what made the books pop off.
Well, I think it's an issue. It's the time issue. Is that when you only have, like you say, an hour and a half, 2 hours for a 500-word, 400-word novel, things are going to get cut. Things are going to get truncated and simplified, and characters, beloved characters are, I'm sorry, they're just not central enough to the plot. We don't see you. Goodbye, Peeves. And so,
like in the I would actually listen. What is your favorite novel to movie adaptation?
My favorite novel to movie adaptation. Oh goodness,
that would actually be a great video for authors too, because a lot of them could.
That would be. I'm not sure.
Maybe Chronicles of Narnia? Like the first one, maybe.
Maybe the first Narnia, as I remember it, was.
Are you talking about the original, or that other remake that came out that was in 2008? Because I've seen both of them. I think Chronicles of Narnia is close as you can get.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings obviously was there.
Lord of the Rings did an admirable job for the amazing expanse of material that they had to
Do you think Game of Thrones did it for the TV show?
See, I've never looked at the novels for that.
Okay.
So I'm not going to judge on that one.
You said Aragon earlier, right?
Now this is not movie, is television, but I think that at least portions, the earlier episodes of The Expanse, the sci-fi television show. It was originally on Sci-Fi Network and then on Amazon Prime for the last couple of 3 seasons. They did a right good job, in my estimation, of portraying a very rich and complex speculative fiction world. And again, not movie, but
you said earlier Percy Jackson is another one too.
The Percy Jackson Disney series is a very good adaptation. Not perfect. There are things that I kind of wish. I think it went like 8 episodes, and I think it would have been better if they had either gone 10 episodes or made each episode maybe 10 to 15 minutes longer, just to keep from having to rush some things and let some things kind of more simmer a little bit. But I thought it was overall a very good adaptation. And the fact that Rick Riordan was part of the team adapting it goes a long way toward that, I think.
Yeah, I just hope that the movie adaptations of novels, or like comic movies, are a whole different set of conversation. But just for as far as novels, I hope the first time someone experiences said movie novel to movie adaptation, it's an adaptation that they see that really, really piques their interest to go check out the book. Because most of the time, people will always say, most of the time, from my experience, the books were better.
Because it's almost always better than the
yeah. but the movie should be a starting point to the point where it gave you a good enough experience to go and read the book. Actually,
I would think that if the movie makes you want to know more about that world and more about that story, that's a win for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
That is absolutely a win for everybody.
So the last few things I'll ask you here,
Sure.
since we're wrapping up the show in a little bit here. First things first is, do you have anything planned coming up at the end of 2024, going into 2025 that you want to let the audience know about?
Look for the second novel of the Caretaker trilogy, called Dead of Night. Should be coming out, I'm hoping, by mid-2025. I just got it back from my editor, and so we're kind of rounding the corner on that, but I'm not ready to announce a launch date yet. And so that'll be that's fun. That's kind of where my attention is editing that, and then I'm about a fourth of the way through book 3. Twilight of Avalon is kind of in the early stages, but I'm making progress on that. So I've got some projects coming up, but right now I'm kind of hunkering down and in the writer chair and in the editor chair, and trying to keep my kitchen in order. We had to have work on our floor in our kitchen today. So.
Oh, that's always fun. Oh no, yeah. Oh, your whole floor is just dirt. You put a tile on it.
We've got about a 4x4 hole in the middle of my kitchen right now. So yeah, it's not.
Oh god, the worst one is always like bathroom stuff. We got to take out
not ideal, but you know.
So the last thing I'll ask you, man, is any shout outs you want to give to anyone in particular, and any closing thoughts or statements you have before we end the show?
Thanks to Steve Googlich for passing my name on to you and your name on to me. I was happy to be able to fit in here. Steve's got a wonderful novel out called Piercing the Veil, which is I don't know if he considers it young adult or how he would consider it, but it is a very it is a story with both some whimsy and some gravity to it, and I was one of his critique partners. Really loved that story. Kudos to Steve. He is the best encourager of fellow creatives that I know. So check out his stuff. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and you yourself have a new book coming out soon. You're on the 6th book. I remember you mentioning earlier as well.
It's out. It is out. Shadow of the King.
Go on Amazon and pick up your copy.
Yes, it has been out for most of a month now.
Awesome. So hopefully you get some good reviews on that as well. I just want to say thank you to Darrell for coming in and saving the day, because there was some work shenanigans. He was basically Spider-Man. He swooped in and just saved me as being Mary Jane.
I'm not kissing you upside down.
Me neither. But I could be Black Cat.
My wife would be very upset if I tried to do that.
She'd be like, "Oh my goodness, how was my husband Spider-Man? And he didn't tell me."
Yeah, I'm fine.
So thank you guys for checking out this episode of the MSK Show, and we will see you guys later. Have a great night, everybody. See you guys later.